Okay, so very good evening to you. The topic which we shall be discussing today is the executive remuneration and the corporate reputation management. So please don't look at the topic number; they're just random. So I know it's not topic 2; it's I think 3rd, 4th, maybe. The executive compensation or the remuneration is a very important, component of the executive board of directors, and at the same time, the principal and the agent relationship. Because we studied in the agency theory that the ownership and the control are separated in the modern companies. And the principal and the agent is the manager, principal are the owners of the company, basically shareholders. They may have the separate utility function, which means their own agendas, their own motivations. And very highly likely, if they have different agenda, different utility function, they might come at a conflict. And if you see from the stakeholders theory point of view, it's also possible that there can be inter-stakeholder conflict or there can be intra-stakeholder conflict. So it's quite possible that because you have different motivation, thus your expectations from the company are also very different. Executive compensation, we know, if you look at your company's corporate governance section, or the board of directors section, or if you if you look at the contents of your annual report, which I hope you must have seen in your case company's context, you will not miss the reward, the compensation, the salary, these kind of terms in the context of your both executive board and the non-executive board. But when you see it, you will find that the executive compensation has two major components. One is the fixed. Fixed is the base salary, the flat salary, and it is also called non-performance compensation. Why we call it non-performance compensation? Because it has nothing to do with the performance of the company. You perform good, you perform bad, that base salary sticks. You get it. But and in fact, not until a long time ago, it's a very recent phenomena. I mean, some 30 years ago, something like that. Most of the remuneration which the agent would get would be fixed. The variable component, the performance-based component, is quite a recent phenomenon. And I'll tell you why the companies are moving away from the fixed to the variable component. First of all, if you look at the European companies in comparison to the US companies, you will find that the US companies are comparatively giving more money to the managers than the European companies. And secondly, the American companies are giving more variable compensation in comparison to the European companies. Because in Europe, still, we might have evolved a lot, but the regulation in terms of the fixed pay, I mean, we're still not as performance oriented in Europe as the America is, as the US is. So, and it's not applying to all the American continent. I mean, I'm talking about the US basically. If you look at the Canada, then it's very different. But the fact is that the variable pay component is very much on the rise in the US. And now, even in the non-US settings, the percentage of the variable pay, which is based on the performance. If you perform, you get. If you don't perform, you don't get. So this is more now getting in the fashion. Okay. So the idea is that, from the first slide, is that the executive compensation is a very important topic of discussion when you have the principal and the agent relationship. Not only principal and agent relationship, but also when you talk about the stakeholders approach. the inter-stakeholder conflict or the intra-stakeholder conflict. For example, the agent would like to get more money in the form of bonuses, in the form of reward, whereas the principal might like to get more dividend, the share of profit. So there can be the conflict between the principal and the agent. So the agency theory can also arise when there is a conflict between the two stakeholders and so on and so forth. And the genesis of this conflict lies in the agency theory, which we have done in details, and which says that the principal and the agent have or may have the different utility functions, that is their motivations, and quite often their motivations can come in conflict with one another. And the executive compensation is on the rise across the world in general, but of course the American companies, they have far more pay which they give to the managers, and a larger chunk of this compensation is based on the variable pay, which is performance-based compensation. So fixed pay is more like I will have no hesitation in calling fixed as a non-performance pay. So it's just get the money, that's it. The challenge is that to find the well-deserving compensation contract of your top managers, you need to make sure that the utility function of both principal and the agent are known, and they also have very good alignment, means that they are not, there is no conflict. The fact is that we have seen in the agency theory that it's difficult to make agency cost zero. I hope you recall that the agency cost has three components, three parts. It's a monitoring cost, the bonding cost, and the residual loss. In theory, your monitoring cost can be zero. Okay? In theory, your bonding cost can be zero as well. If the principal and the agent, they are really in love with one another, they really like each other, and they just, it's a perfect utopian world, there is no conflict, nothing like that, then it could be possible that the monitoring and the bonding cost, they can be close to zero. But the fact is that in the big companies, the ownership and control is so separated that those who control, they have the last laugh in the decision making, long-term decision making, short-term decision making, the company's operation. So there's always a leeway, there's always a possibility in the hands of the agent to capitalize that situation for his or her benefit. So the residual cost is that component of the agency cost, which is literally not possible to cut it down. Yeah. So that's a big challenge. So here, I'm giving you a theory, I'm giving you an idea, I'm giving you a reality, I'm giving you a practice, but at the same time, I'm also, in the red, I'm writing down what can be the challenges so that we don't get what we just discussed. Okay, so this is the theory, this is the idea in the black, and in the red, we have the challenges that we can come across. Executive compensation is actually a corporate governance mechanism, which basically is to make some alignment between the principal and the agent, because they have the moral hazard and they also have the adverse selection problem. These are different, but difficult words. I'll try to explain them now. If I'm the agent, why I'm employed? I'm employed because I have the information advantage, which I know about the industry, I know about the business. But my shareholders, my principal, do not know about it. But then the problem is that if I have this information advantage over them, then I may indulge in moral hazard. So I can do something immoral in the sense that I can do something for myself, but not for the company. During the office hours, I'm not working for the company, but I'm doing something else, which is beneficial to me personally, but not for the company. Or I can do something, I can make some wrong decisions. But you, the principal, are not able to catch me because you don't have the information, the amount of information which I have, you don't have it. The question is how to get rid of this problem. The problem is that we need to find a good executive compensation contract which align our wishes of both principal and the agent. Principal is aware that if I'm not paid well, I will utilize my informational advantage and I would indulge in the moral hazard and the adverse selection things. Therefore, the principal say, hey, don't you worry about it. I give you a lot of money. I give you a very good pay package. But in turn, I want you not to indulge in the moral hazard and the adverse selection. Don't sell the secrets of the company to anybody else. And this is why the executive compensation is quite high. You know, if you look at the salary of the CEO and if you look at the salary of an average factory worker, there could be hundreds of times difference between them. The idea is to create a bond between. So it's, you can also call it more like a bonding cost, that the executive compensation, especially the performance-based pay. Because if you give them the flat pay, the base pay, the non-performance-based pay, then the agent can become sluggish. He or she doesn't really bother about the company performance because it's more like a public sector thing that when you know that, hey, I don't care about the company's performance. I know for sure that this is the X amount which I would get no matter what happens to the company. But when the principal goes a step further and says that, hey, you know what, we want to give you lots of money, millions of euros. But the problem, gentlemen, is that 90% of this 20 million or 30 million euros, which you will be getting at the end of the year, 90% of them belongs to some performance. So we tie them to some performance. We subject it to some performance. So unless you perform, you will not get this money. Then as an agent, I would also be a little bit kind of, I start shivering. Oh my gosh, if they offer me 20 million euros a year, and if I perform horrible, there's a danger that I might lose 18 million. Not only that, I lose 18 million, but it will be news in the media that, hey, this CEO couldn't get his bonuses, and then my reputation in the job market goes down. So if I apply for a next job, nobody would give me, because they would say, hey, you had a very bad track record in the previous company, so why should we keep you as CEO? So it's a good corporate governance mechanism. Why, I don't know why I write corporate mechanism. It should be corporate governance mechanism, not just mechanism. So the executive compensation can serve as a very ideal corporate governance mechanism, which brings down the agency cost, and it brings the bond, the bondage, the relationship between the principal and the agent more romantic. it makes it better, so that there is no conflict between them, and there's no moral hazard, and there's no adverse selection problem, and the agent is not misutilizing his or her informational advantage. But again, there's a problem. The problem is that when the principal is expecting these two things, when designing the executive compensation, the principal forgets one thing, that not all the risks are controllable by the agent. Agent can only check what is happening within the company. There's no wastage. There is a right decisions at the right time. There are information disclosures. There is a good monitoring. There is an internal control system so that people are not wasting their resources. So that is something which the agent can do. But if there is a GDP slowdown in the country, if there is an increase of inflation, if the interest rate fluctuate, if the country's currency is depreciating against the other currencies, if there is a unemployment rising, if the economy is heading to the recession, if the state is controlling the money supply, if the fiscal policy of the government is horrible, if there's a change of the government and the new government is it's not for the businesses, but it's very much kind of anti-businesses. In that case, it's too unrealistic to assume that the agent would be controlling all the risk, because then things are out of his reach. He's as vulnerable as anybody else. So there is a fallacy. The fallacy is that you are trying to make a fantastic compensation package for your agent, hoping that the agent would perform. Performance includes how well the agent can see the risk and how well these risks are, managed by the agent. But most of the risk which the company is facing, they are not in the control of agent in the first place. So why are we doing it then? So this is something very complicated situation that we can't live without doing it. But at the same time, we also know that the agent doesn't control your monetary policy. The agent doesn't control your fiscal policy. If there's a global recession, if there is a war between two countries and the ships are not allowed to, ferry, if it's no-fly zone, or if there is a army coup or political unrest, then there's nothing the agent can do. Or if there's a natural disaster, if there is any pandemic, whatever, nothing much the agent can do. In 2019, when the companies were planning to make the compensation package for the CEO for the next year, 2020, nobody would have considered that their COVID-19 would come, because it's a very unusual situation. Okay, and no CEO has been able to manage this risk. There's no company which can say that, oh, you know what, we know that there's a global pandemic going on, but our company is totally immune to COVID-19. This is impossible to imagine. Can linking pay with the performance reduce the company's risk? Well, if all the risks are controlled by the managers, yes, you can, as I said before. But we know that most of the risks are not controlled by the manager. And since the control over risk is very, very few, the manager's control over risk is not very too much. So therefore, why are we designing the pay package? In reality, we have to do it, no doubt about it. But the philosophical question is that you are designing a compensation contract for your top managers because you hope that they would be performing better. They will be able to control the risk. They will keep the risk away from the company. But in reality, they can't. Not because they're bad managers, but because they don't have control over it. Number one, the risks are unknown. Did anybody know about COVID-19 in 2019? Nobody. And if it is now reality, then can they control it? Well, they are finding as vulnerable as anybody else. Maybe a bit better because of their professional capacity, but I won't say that they're fully controlling the risk. So then the whole idea of performance-based pay package become a little bit arbitrary in theory, but in reality, we will do it. We can't escape from it. So the challenge that so then it's sometimes a bit difficult that, okay, which performance are you judging? Are you looking at the historic performance? Okay, so because then something look unfair. I think I better give you an example, then things will become better. Imagine we are living in the era when the profits of the companies are skyrocketing. I mean, we are having the economy which the world saw during mid-1990s, I would say. Stock prices are going up, the employment is rising, American corporate sector is flourishing, Japan is doing great. Well, until then, things are really going good. People are having jobs, everything is fine, per capita income is increasing, the salaries are rising. At that time, your company's profit is increasing by 5%. And you want to give the bonus to your manager because the company's profit is going up. But then you say, hey, wait, what are we doing? If you look at the industry average or the sector average, you find that the profits of the companies on an average have gone up by 10%. Your manager's profit is going up by, your manager has produced only 5%. Shouldn't you even penalize him instead of rewarding? So you have to, the point I'm trying to make is that when you are thinking that your manager are controlling risk and they have all the informational advantage and stuff like that, you need to see in the comparative sense, not in the absolute sense. If I see my manager in the absolute sense, then 5% profit, oh, great, bravo, give the bonuses. But when I see in the comparative sense that my company has only produced 5% profits, whereas my competitors on an average have produced 10%, hey, my company has lost, in fact. Why should I give him bonuses? He doesn't deserve it. On the opposite, the global market is down. And I find that my company's profits have gone down by 5%. So I am having a loss of 5%. Why should I give bonuses to my managers if I am having a loss? And this decision I make when I see my company's performance in absolute sense. But now I compare. How much my company has lost? 5%. How much the whole industry has lost? 10%. Forget about cutting his reward. I should give the special reward to my manager. When everybody else is losing 10%, my company is losing 5%. So in net, my company is gaining 5%. Whereas if I look at the absolute figures, I should penalize my manager. But when I see in the comparative sense, I should be giving a good reward to my CEO. So therefore, sometimes this reward compensation, this kind of thing, the risk and reward thing, this whole game, this whole mechanism become very flimsy, very arbitrary. So then the question is that you need to see in the comparative sense. Okay, so in that case, you need to look at some good, reliable, benchmarks. But again, the challenge is that having the good, reliable benchmarks is not difficult, are not easy to find. It's very difficult to find that on what cases, how you compare the industry benchmark, how you compare the sector benchmark, and then which benchmark? About the accounting profits, which are subject to manipulation. You can manipulate profits, accounting profits, or should we look at the market performance of the company? But the problem with the market performance, the stock market performance of the company, is that the CEO have hardly any control over the market. Your stock prices can go up when the market is good, and the stock prices are going down when the market is bad. So even though you have the best CEO in the world, if the stock market is crashing, your shares will crash. Does it mean that you cut his salary? Don't give him bonuses? That's very unfair. And about the accounting profits, operating profits, this net profit, earning per share, these are things, I'm not saying that the accounting data is not reliable, but there's always a room for data massaging, we use a phrase, or this kind of creative accounting, or what we call as some kind of tweaking the figures, the fudging of figures. So I use many words now to make it clear. So finding a reliable benchmark, it's easier said than done. Okay, so yeah. And then the next thing that could be that should we look at the performance, output, and then the word I have been using this phrase for the last 15-20 minutes, performance. Input performance or output performance. The input, the output performance is the result of the company, like in the form of profits, okay, going up, going down. Stock market is also an output. The input is that how much efforts the CEO is doing. There are many jobs which you are paid based on the input efforts, not the outcome, not the output. But usually these jobs are not very top level job. I can give you an example. Many people you might have experienced, I went through when I was a student in Britain. I used to work as some kind of in some store, and I would be paid hourly job, hourly wage. Like in Britain, at that time it was I think £5 and 10 cents, 10 pence. Yeah, so 5.10 pounds I used to get for every hour. That was more like an input based. So I work at a till point. Now, how creative I can be there? What type of strategy I will make for the company? Nothing, just an input, just an effort. Cleaning the floor, setting the clothes and everything fine so that it looks good. It shouldn't look clumsy. That was my job profile, but that's more like an input. But in the top jobs, in the top managerial job, you cannot pay the CEO of a company based on how many hours he was in the office today. That is more like outcome based, more like an output based performance. And moreover, now the job dimensions are changing so fast these days. People are working from home. How do you know that they are working from home? It's difficult. So the whole dimension of measuring the input is changing. And moreover, as I said, that the input-based pay is more applicable, more in action for the low caliber, with the low skilled, I won't say low caliber, but some kind of low skilled jobs. But if you look at the high skilled jobs, then you cannot measure the effort of the managers or the top professionals based on how many hours they spend in the office. Okay, so that is also a problem, that the word performance itself is very ambiguous. Executive compensation is based on the output-based performance. As I said, that it can be the accounting performance, or it can be based on some market-based performance like stock market. But then the challenge, as I highlighted before, accounting profit can be manipulated. The market performance is relatively more influenced by the macroeconomic, political, and other factors. And also the absolute measures that we discussed before, they also have several limitations. So life is full of challenges, and so is the executive compensation phenomenon. Yeah, so this is something which I said that I think I've given you example before, that when the company is increasing 3%, when the whole market is increasing by 3%, but your company is increasing by 1.5%, then in the absolute sense, you made a good progress, but in the comparative sense, I should not give any bonuses to the CEO. On the contrary, if there is a 3% decline in the market, but in my company's case, there is a 1.5% decline. Since in the absolute sense, it's a decline, I shouldn't give any bonus to my CEO, but when I see the comparative sense, my company has lost half of what others have lost. So in that case, when I see in the comparative sense, in the relative sense, I think I should reward my CEO, my managers. So that way, the relative performance measures are very important. But again, the question is who will bell the cat? Where these relative performance measures come from? There's so many relative performance measures. Which one you pick up? Because if you pick up one, then you'll be accused of being choosy. You know, you make some kind of choice, suitable choice, your choice which suits you. Okay. Yeah. So then there can be some unhealthy business practices. There can be non-price competition, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the basic issues that we see in the executive compensation discussion. The next concept which I want to share with you is the pay performance sensitivity. That how much is your pay connected with the company's performance? I can actually draw some kind of function. Maybe that will help you. Just a sec. Yeah. So if I have a new sheet here, and if I have a text here, yeah. So I can say that the pay is a function of performance. Yeah, it means the pay depends on the performance. You perform, you get the pay. You don't perform, you don't get the pay. Usually this is a positive function. Positive function means, where is plus sign? Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's here, positive. Positive means if pay is here and performance is here, so if the performance is up, if the performance is going, I can do like this. If the performance is going up, plus the pay is going up. And we know in mathematics that plus times plus is plus. On the other hand, on the other hand, if the performance is negative, then the pay is also negative, going down. Low performance, low pay. And again, we know in the high school maths that if you multiply minus and minus, it becomes plus. That's why I say that it's a positive function. And if I draw it, if I plot it, it will look like this. So if I say that so this is pay. Oops, maybe I can call it. No, what I'm doing. So if this is pay, and this is performance, accounting, market, whatever, absolute, relative, whatever, input, output, whatever. then the function should be like this. And then some company may have a function like this also. Then some company may have a function like this also. All these three lines, the relationship between pay and performance are positive, but are the same? No. Look at this company. If you perform this much, in case of this company, then you are paid this much. But for another company, this is, let's call it A. Oh, sorry, I think I need to change it. This is A company, this is B company, and this is C company. Whereas for the B company, for the same performance, you are paid more. For the C company, you are paid, oh my gosh. For the C company, you are paid even more. And in mathematics, we use a phrase called slope. We use this phrase called slope. Slope of which company? Slope of C is more than that of B, and slope of B is more than that of A. What does it mean? It means that the pay performance sensitivity of C is the highest. Why it's highest? Because the slope is the sharpest. You look at the slope, C. It's very sharp. If it's like a hill, it's be impossible to walk. And the slope of B is comparatively low. And the slope of A is the lowest, the smallest. It means that in the company A, you are not paid much based on the performance. So it could be possible that the A is some kind of old-fashioned company where almost 60–70% pay is a fixed pay, and maybe 20–30% is based on performance. Not zero, because if the performance-based pay was zero, in case the performance-based pay was zero, then this line would have been like this, but that's not true. So there is some slope, at least, not zero slope like here, but some slope is here. B is more like some old-fashioned in the design company or something like that, but C is more like a biotech or this media or IT kind of company, because here, if in case of A, you get the ratio of fixed to performance, like 60–40, then in B, it's 60% based on performance and 40% fixed. Whereas in C, it could be that 90% is paid based on performance and 10% is fixed. So the industries, sectors, and even the national culture, like in America, in the US, regardless of your industry or sector where you come from, the performance-based pay is definitely very high. So it depends on several factors. And that makes the pay performance sensitivity, that is a slope. If you make, first of all, there is a positive relationship between pay and performance. Nobody would give you more pay when the performance is going down. And nobody would cut your pay when the performance is going up. So this relationship is always like hand in hand, positive. More performance, more pay, less performance, less pay. So the relationship is always positive if you draw the straight line. But the question is that, are all the companies lying on the same line? No, that's not true. Because each company, depending upon its industry characteristics, depending upon its sector characteristics, and depend upon its national characteristics, they would vary. Their performance sensitivity in terms of pay would be different. So I hope you get my message here. So we're still doing some theory, but now I need to go back to the slides. So if you allow me to go there. Yeah. So you can see that the pay performance sensitivity or the elasticity of pay is very different. For the large firms, the absolute amount, normally the small firms are very sharp in terms of the pay performance sensitivity. The big companies definitely pay you more, but maybe they're not very sensitive to performance, because in the big companies, multinational companies, if 1 or 2 years the performance goes down, they don't take away your money back. But at the same time, they don't pay you hugely if the performance is increasing. So in the big companies, the pay performance sensitivity is comparatively less. Whereas in the startups, in the small IT companies, it's a very hire and fire thing is very frequent. If you do a great job, you get tons of bonuses, but if you're not doing a good job, then the whole thing is out. It depends upon the sector. Like I mentioned, IT, biotech, media, R&D, these are some kind of industry sectors where the pay performance sensitivity is very high. Whereas in the old-fashioned companies like food, textile, beverages, engineering, iron and steel, sugar, cement, these are very textiles, they're very old-fashioned industries, sectors. So here, usually the pay performance sensitivity is quite low, not missing altogether, but pretty much low. So it's more like a firm, the slope is not sharp. This pay performance sensitivity has increased recently quite a lot. I remember this article by Jensen and Murphy, fantastic article. They wrote this, they published this article in 1990. At that time, they found that the pay performance sensitivity is very low. That is, for every 1,000 increase in the value of the shares, the company's value, only $3.25 is the amount by which the executive pay is increasing. So if I divide 3.25 by 1,000, the pay performance sensitivity would be close to 0, basically. So almost parallel to x-axis. But now, in the recent times, the pay performance sensitivity has really gone up. You can do it by yourself. For example, if you look at the company's performance, let's say, if you look at the company's, just make an experiment. You can take your company's operating profit data for the last 5 years, one column. And then you look at the total pay package of the CEO of the company in the next column. And then find that how much pay has increased over the years and how much operating profit has increased over the year. And then find the average. And find out that whether the pay performance sensitivity is rising over time or falling over time. So this can be small. I won't call it a proper research, but because it's too, we're not doing any research in this course, but just for the sake of experimentation, that if you can find, on the one hand, total salary of the CEO in one column in the last 5 years, and then the operating profit performance of the company in the last 5 years, and see that, and then find the change in operating profit every year, like this year minus previous year minus 2 years, and so on and so forth. And then the same way you do for the compensation of the CEO, and see that, do you find any sensitivity? Do you find any connection between them? If I make a hypothetical company, because I said it, so I think I'm morally obliged to do it as well. So just imagine that I have let me find some Excel sheet which I can create. Okay, so in fact, if I want to do this experiment, let's say that I have a company and I have got the data of 2019, 18, 17. I'm just making these fictitious figures, so nothing is real, but same way you can do it. If you look at your company's operating profit, which is very easily obtainable in the income statement, in the financial statements, you can see. Usually when you look at 2019 statement, you will also see 2018's performance as well. So it means if you look at 2019, you can get 2018. If you look at 17, you get 16's data. If you look at 15, you can also get 2014's data. So normally they are like a comparative table. So if I call it operating profit, and here I call as I leave one column blank, and here I call performance-based pay, not total pay, but the performance-based pay, because total pay has its own issues. Performance-based pay, okay. And let's say, and this would be, let's say, both are in millions. Okay, let's call it millions. Who cares? So if we have the operating profit and being billions, something like this. And this was like 2014, let's say 1,901. And then the performance-based pay is 12, 11.5, 11, 11.5 again, 8.3, and 6. And if I want to find the change, change, okay. Change and change. And I can find the change this year minus the previous year, divide by the previous year, and divide to it, so it comes, so the last figure is not required. And then same way here, the current year minus the previous year, divide by the previous year, and this way, yeah, the last figure will be not needed. And if I find the average of the average, so this is the average, and I want to find the average of this average. So the average change in the operating profit is this, and the average change in the average change is this. And if this is the performance and this is the pay, and if I want to find the pay performance sensitivity, pay performance sensitivity. Oh, so this is, so pay performance. So pay divided by the performance. So yeah, so then I have to find the average change in the pay divided by the average change in the performance over time. Oh, this comes to be 619%. So this is huge. Well, this is just a kind of hypothetical figure. So I can say that for every €1 increase in the company's profits, performance, the CEO's salary is increasing by €6.20. So, but remember that this is a kind of, so here the sensitivity is more than 1. So it's the ultra elastic sensitivity. So if I have to plot this line, goodness me, how can I plot it? Wait a sec, how can I plot it? This is getting very interesting. Insert, is it This one, figure. Oh my. Styles. Where does the data come from? Bill, outline. I know how to get the data, but how to get the data? That's a problem. Let me pause the record. So this is a typical pay performance contract in theory. You can see that there's a performance benchmark here on the horizontal axis. And then we have the reward on the vertical axis. And then there's a base pay. Okay, the base pay is a flat pay. And if you are able to perform consistently to a certain level, because the thing is that when you are appointed as a new CEO, you are not exposed to the competition straight away. So there is no performance kind of pressure on you that you need to generate so much of revenue. So you're given some kind of breathing space so that you are only achieving certain minimum performance, which we call as a threshold performance. And if you are consistently able to achieve the threshold performance, then you get the base pay. But on top of that, you also get some kind of bare minimum bonus. But when you are in the true sense that you are in the company, you are now knowing things better. Then you are exposed to the kind of the open sea and the sea full of sharks. And here you can see that your performance will determine how much pay you get. Until you reach a stage when your pay package is very high and you are not offered any performance-based pay as you were paid. Because in many countries, there's a law that you can't pay money to the CEO endlessly. So even this performance-based cap has to end somewhere. So this is a typical performance contract. In the very early phase of your career and in the very late phase of your career, when you're about to retire, here you would be about 60s something, and here you are maybe in your mid-20s or early 30s. You are exposed to less kind of competition. But here, about 30 to 60 is the time when the CEO is at the peak, when you are really brave enough to face the challenges. And that's where you are exposed to the performance pressure. And this is why I call it as an incentive zone. You can see from this to this line. So this line, and if you look this line, you will find that this line looks like the lines which I drew here on the whiteboard here, these lines. So this line can be low performance sensitivity, this can be moderate performance sensitivity, or it can be very high performance sensitivity. So depending upon the situation, depending upon the nature and the type of company and the other characteristics that we discussed, that this shape, this incentive zone line shape would be depending upon the industry sector or the national economy characteristics. So this is how the typical pay performance sensitivity is determined. And if you look at the fictitious data that we took, and when we had this Excel, so this is how it looked like that. Maybe when you are having in the beginning, you know, but you can see that here there is a one phase which 0.94 was here, something, yeah. So between 2017 and 19, so 2017 and 18 is a time when your performance has been really sharp. But of course, I took the data. So if, for example, I change the data to, if I change these numbers, definitely this will be changing as well. So 10, 9, 8.3, and 6. So of course, yeah. So this is also some kind of, you can see that here from 2000 from 2000. Yeah, from 2019, if we go backwards until 2015, the pay performance sensitivity is not very high, but from 2015 to 14, it has been very sharp. Yeah. So that was only my suggestion to you, that you guys can take some data of your company's operating profit, and then you can also find some performance-based pay, which you can easily find, no problem. You can easily find in the annual report in the corporate governance section, or in the, if you use the right word, the director's compensation and so on and so forth. You will not miss it for sure. And if you get the compensation data, and then you do this change thing, apply the formula, find the average if you want, and you can find the overall pay performance sensitivity. But if you want to plot it, of course, with some struggle as we went through, you can also plot it. So that will also show the trend over time. Okay. So this is your main compensation model, as I can call it. Of course, this model will not be same for each country, but the basic logic would be same. That in the very early phase of your career, and when you are almost reaching the twilight of your career, that's the time when you're not exposed to the performance kind of thing too much. But the main incentive zone is where usually the CEO is about 30, 40 to 60. So that 15, 20 years are where you're really tested a lot. Yeah, so this is the kind of, and of course the component of the executive pay are having the base salary, the fixed salary, which also call as a non-performance compensation. There was an act called Graf Crystal's disclosure when Bill Clinton was the president of the US. And at that time, the law was passed that you cannot give fixed pay more than $1 million to your managers. And before 1993, there was still a more trend of having more fixed pay than the performance-based pay. And before 93, you could pay any amount of fixed salary to the CEOs, the top managers. But now with this act, you will not be able to pay more than $1 million to your CEO as a fixed pay. If you pay, then that money will not be tax deductible. You have to pay tax also on that. And the CEO were very angry at this. To make them happy and to keep them in the company, the boards of directors devised that, hey, if we can't pay them more than $1 million through the fixed pay, let's develop this component of performance-based pay so that we can pay them as much as we like. And then came this idea of, so the move was not successful because the boards were able to produce the other way, which include the guaranteed bonuses, deferred compensation, enhanced pension, and the other requisites. So this move was unsuccessful, and the bonuses came in the picture. The bonuses are based on the performance-based pay. As I said, that in a typical American company, if your pay package, if you're a mid-cap company, then you may get about $25 million a year, but your performance-based pay can range about 80, 90%, or even more sometimes. Stock options are also given that you are offered the option. Option means that so Let me give you an example of stock option. Otherwise, it's difficult to explain this concept, and you will not understand what I'm talking about. Let me give you one more example. And I need a new sheet here. And now I need a text. Imagine Miss X is the CEO of Zeta Limited IT firm, listed in New York Stock Exchange. Her total compensation for 2019 is $30 million, and the performance-based pay, and the performance-based pay is 27 million, which means it's 90%. And her fixed pay and other, other benefits, whatever you call it. Benefits are 3 million. %. She is paid all the performance-based pay in the stock options. In 2019, the share price of the company is $20. And this is also fixed as her exercise price. I'll explain what exercise price means. In 2020, the share price of the firm increases to $30. In other words, for each share Miss X has gained $10 because her strike price was $20, which means that if she come to the company as a common shareholders, she will get the share for $20. So she gives $20. But what happened is that in the next year, the share price went to $30. So it means if she has a share of $20, she can sell for $30. And how many shares she has? She has, goodness me, she 27 million. If you divide 27 million, I have to divide in the Excel, 27 million. So 6 zeros, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, divide by, because the share price was 20, okay? So divide by $20. So how many shares she has? Oh my gosh. So she has 135. 135 and 5 zeros. 1, 2, 3. No, 135. 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shares. So for each share which she owns for $20, and this $20 share which she has, this is part of his pay package. So basically, she not only get 27 million in shares, but she can also sell these shares at $30 in the market and make $10 more. So basically, she is not only getting 27 million, but actually she has earned 40.5 million if you look carefully, because the share which she got from the company as a part of her package salary, their price went up from 20 to 30. And if you see that her value of the portfolio has jumped from 27 million to 40.5 million, because if you multiply by 30 with the number of shares she has. So even though the company has given her 27 million, but the market has rewarded her with additional 13.5 million because the share price have gone up from 20 to 30. So now basically, Miss X has received 40.5 million from the market, plus she also owns 3 million in the form of cash. Well, does she even care about this 3 million? But why not? She's a super rich woman. So this is her overall pay package she got. In the books, her pay package is 30 million, but actually she got 43.5 million because the market has made her richer as well. Good luck. If you look in this example, the CEO is happier because the share price has went up and she is richer than what she was supposed to be richer by the amount. But the shareholders are very happy as well because the stock price have gone up. They can sell the shares at expensive price. Look here, you can see that in this example, we see the alignment of the utility function of both principal and agent, because both are happier than before due to the share price increase. That's the idea, that if you are making performance-based pay, then you are able to minimize the agency cost. The so-called differences between the motivation of the principal and the agent can be overcome if you are creating a pay package which is making both agent and the principal happier. With the price increase of the stocks, the shareholders are happy because their wealth is more than before. At the same time, the agent is happy. But if she was getting all the fixed pay, then she might not have been trying hard for the company to push the share prices up. And if she was working for some public sector, undertaking some state-owned enterprise, she doesn't even care if the shareholders lose all the money because her pay would be fixed. She doesn't care. But even if she was working in the private sector, and all the money was coming from the fixed pay, she wouldn't have done any much effort to enhance the wealth of the shareholders. But now what she did efforts for the company. She put her sincerity. She worked sincerely, honestly, with commitment. And guess what happens? It's not just shareholders who are happier. She's also happier than before. So this is like a win-win. This is why people argue that these kind of performance-based pay can align the interest of both parties. So this is why the stock options are quite widely used in the pay in the modern day executive compensation contract. Okay, so we carry on to the stock option. Yeah, but I really want that you should go through the remaining slides by yourself and find out that, because it's very important for you to understand a little bit of the mechanism of the options. Well, I don't want to discuss too much because there can be manipulation of the option prices also. But these three slides, 1, 2, and 3, these 3 slides are only meant for those students who have really keen interest in the little bit of the financial side. But I leave it to you to investigate that what is a call, what is an option, and how they work by yourself. So with this, we have completed this topic, the executive compensation. So let me have a quick recall. Today, we started with the philosophy behind the executive compensation. And on the one hand, in the black letters, we were discussing about the core ideas, core concepts. But in the red letters, we were also writing down the risk associated with in the implementation of those core ideas. And then we saw many challenges. And then we developed a model of the pay performance sensitivity, which I drew on the whiteboard as well. And we did some Excel calculations also, which I don't think I need to. It will be in the recording, so you can see what I've done, basically. But then we also saw the components of the executive compensation and where the fixed versus the performance-based pay. And the performance-based pay, it may be very alluring, it can be very interesting, but at the same time, there are some risks associated with it. But the whole idea of this performance-based pay compensation is to align the interest of the principal and the agent. The question is whether this keeps aligned or it keeps changing. It has its own pitfalls. And before I discuss it next week, I want that you should develop some of your basic understanding about this concept, because otherwise it's a bit complicated to understand. But if you understand, if you don't want to understand it, because it's not a finance course, if you only want to understand, if you only know the basic mechanism of the options and how they work, performance-based pay, the example which I gave you on the whiteboard about Miss X and this Zeta company, that's enough. We don't need more than it. But for those people who really want to take a dive into it and want to investigate more about the performance-based pay, for them, yes, they can try. And if they have any questions, then I can take up in the beginning of the next lecture before I discuss the vision and mission of the company, which is actually, well, the next lecture is day after tomorrow, so it's not a long time to go. So with this, I complete this session. So thank you very much for your patience and for your participation. See you in 2 days.